In our previous crypto chat, we touched on some of the biggest spaces in crypto. And just to name a few, main coins, DeFi, shitcoins, NFTs, GameFi, and crypto AI. And for this episode, I wanted to talk about some of the biggest trends that you're seeing right now in crypto in 2024, as well as some of your prediction on what's going to be hot because there's a lot of really interesting trends going on right now that are worth talking about. What would you say is the most prominent trend that you're bullish on in 2024?
Crypto AI is going to be one of the biggest narratives in the bull run of 2024, 2025. And to be honest with you, one of the things that
What would you say is the most prominent trend that you're bullish about in crypto in 2024?
crypto AI is going to be one of the biggest narratives and hottest narratives in 2024, 2025 bull run. If we think about AI and its massive need for GPUs, and if you look at crypto and its massive needs of GPUs, you start to see some synergies there, right? We have a whole bunch of mining hardware that we've had online for years now, and all of this mining hardware relies on GPUs. Plus, all the machine learning and all the training also relies on GPUs. So you could look at it as either a synergistic relationship where we somehow merge the needs of crypto and AI, or you can think of it as competing. And I believe that it's actually going to be super duper synergistic.
Synergistic, how so?
I think we'll see some repurposing of GPUs or reusing GPUs across mining and across AI. And I can also see that uh, AI and mining could become one thing when it comes to crypto. And we might have to break this down. I think it's, we're diving into kind of complexity very, very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, but if you think about part of what you do in the blockchain in general is proof of work. Show me that you've done some work, right? That's what kind of BTC does. Is in the Bitcoin network, you're you do work to validate blocks on the blockchain, and you kind of submit proof that you've done that work to the network, and for that, the network will compensate you with BTC, right? Ethereum now is more proof of stake, but I think proof of work and AI when we talk about AI and machine learning, there is multiple phases for you to bring an AI project or bring an AI algorithm or bring a large language model to the world, right? If you think about what that entails, it entails one, having a lot of training data. Then you take that training data and feed it to a neural network or an AI for the purpose of training it. And then eventually, once that network has been trained, now this network is ready to be put online and for you to actually use it, right? This is when you start to use that AI network that you've trained. And in each one of these steps, it's you can see that the blockchain could potentially play a role. When it comes to kind of the data, where do we get this data, how we gather this data, and how we compensate people who can gather this data for us, and there will be lots of interesting use cases there. And then how do we do the training, where do we do that actual training, can that training be done on mining hardware or on new types of hardware that we have yet to see emerge? And then finally, can I take this my machine learning models, and today I can take my machine learning model and host it on AWS and run it on Azure, but can I in the future take that machine learning model and run it on the blockchain? Now, not every blockchain is, you know, Not every blockchain is ideal for these use cases, but I think we'll also see new blockchains emerge to take advantage of those synergies.
And bringing it back a bit, because like you mentioned, it is a pretty complex concept. Bringing it back a bit to what crypto AI is at its core. Is it specifically with the developments of AI, they assist with just the mining piece? Given the recent advancements in AI and neural processing units being added into a lot of the chipsets, and more so the software piece, now including AI, really optimizing and making the machine faster despite of the hardware really not improving as much. So is it the mining piece, or is it something else that crypto AI plays a role in?
Uh, uh, Crypto AI is emerging now as a big space, and I think there's going to be a lot of like subspaces under the crypto AI space. So one good example of that is what we call decentralized compute, right? The easiest way to wrap your head around decentralized compute is think of AWS, right? AWS, I go and I pay with a credit card, and because I paid with a credit card, you give me a bunch of servers and I can run whatever I want on them. A similar model will emerge in crypto where I have what's called decentralized compute. So instead of me running something on AWS, I'm gonna be running it on people's nodes or people's hardware and get compensated or compensate that network or compensate the people who are running that hardware with crypto. So that's what I call this the decentralized compute use case around AI. The second use case that we'll see also in AI is what we're basically the machine learning training. Instead of me, again, like leveraging AWS to and kind of get a ton of training data and now build everything on AWS and build and train a network, I can manage my training data on a blockchain. I can gather training data and source or crowdsource. I can crowdsource training data from people and compensate them in crypto for that data. And then compensate whoever is going to run the training algorithm itself also with crypto. So we talked about there's decentralized compute, and that's where do I run my training and where do I run my actual models. Then we talked about the machine learning training aspect of things, which is can I use the blockchain somehow to facilitate the AI training processes? Finally, the running of that network. And then the other interesting use case that we'll see is what I call AI agents on the blockchain. And these agents can have a lot of use cases. For example, today in Wall Street, there's a lot of funds and a lot of hedge funds that are already running AI for the purpose of trading, right? So you have kind of quants. This is kind of one big example. Is there's a whole quant movement, and these are very big companies that are hiring, PhDs in physics, PhDs in math, to try to create algorithms or to try to train AI models to trade on behalf of the people or the companies. And a similar use case is going to be emerging soon in crypto, where I have, AI bots, like trading bots is something that is not new to crypto. However, I think this year we'll see more AI trading bots connected to the network. And the final trend that I'll touch upon is the ZK, or what we call zero knowledge proofs. So there's a whole set of algorithms called zero knowledge algorithms, which is how do I verify that you did something without actually going and checking your work as you're doing it, without being exposed to a certain data. So we'll also see zero knowledge algorithms when it comes to AI. I'll give you some examples here on that. When you train a neural network, one of the most important things that is the output of that training process is what we call the weights. We touched on this in the previous episode, if you remember, where we talked about how, I have example data being fed to a network, and now the network reconfigures itself and adjusts weights. The weights are the secret sauce. So let's imagine for a second that I go hire you, or hire or outsource the process of the training, and you are a company or you're a crypto project that is really good at training AIs. How do you prove to me that you trained AI in the way I expect you to train it without revealing your secret sauce? So that's where zero knowledge comes in. Anatoly, do you feel that this is complex? So I need to either, do you feel you get it, or do I need to distill it down further?
How can a normal person take advantage of the recent developments with crypto AI? What does that mean for the average person?
The work that's been done right now on the AI layer, for the most part, it's infrastructure, it's network. It's not something that the average person can take advantage of. I think the AI trading bots is something that an average person will take advantage of. you know, Betting or kind of investing into crypto AI is something the average person can do. But a lot of the work being done right now is kind of behind the scene. It's what's going to enable the next layer of innovation, or what's going to enable the next level of breakthroughs when it comes to AI and blockchain. A lot of what's being built right now is more, plumbing layer that goes under the hood. So you'll
The
not be
infrastructure.
so the yes. So the average person is not going to be able to take advantage of that for the most part.
And is it a particular network? Is it on Ethereum? Is it on Solana? I heard BTC is now going to be doing something very similar to Ethereum, where it's used as gas. Are there particular tokens to follow that are having very recent crypto AI developments, or is it literally everyone at once is diving into crypto AI?
There is a lot of crypto tokens right now that are in the market. Like I can name 30, 40, 50 projects. Now, for the most part, these projects exist on different networks. They're not only on Ethereum, they're not only on Solana. I know that everybody's focused, if you look at like the large cap crypto projects, that's BTC, ETH, and Solana. But there's a ton of innovation that's happening on other chains that maybe the average person has not heard of. So if you look at the AI category in crypto, there's quite a few projects. So you see this one is $3 billion market cap, Render. And Render is more or less a GPU network project. BitTensor is another one that's another $3 billion project. And BitTensor, essentially, these guys are kind of building a whole AI layer on the blockchain. Akash Network is another interesting one. So Akash Network, the easiest way to think about it is the AWS of the decentralized world. And of course, there's a ton of protocols that you can see here. The ones that I think are interesting, I'll mention them, but I think we'll need a lot of time to talk about each one of them. But BitTensor is super interesting. Akash Network is super interesting. Um, 0x0 is going to be a big one. PAL AI is going to be a big one. These are the ones that are kind of on my radar.
Sounds good. Now, other than crypto AI, what other developments in crypto are you bullish on in 2024?
The other big narrative in crypto this year is going to be communities, and we've seen this in Web 2 with Alex Hormozy getting majority stake in School. I think communities is something that we're going to see more of happening in the crypto world. I also think that crypto AI and metaverse, or crypto AI and gaming, we'll see some like cross pollination happening between the different projects, right? So if you think about a lot of games, part of what you do in games, or part of the things required in games, is what we call NPCs, or non-player characters. So can there be an AI layer that's providing games, especially Web3 games, with intelligence, where when it comes to what we call agents, it's going to run like agents in the game. I think those will be really interesting narratives that we'll see emerge.
And when it comes to communities, specifically for crypto, I'm tracking that X and Discord generally dominate the space when it comes to crypto discussions. Is that correct?
That is correct. Like X is the biggest crypto community, and then a lot of like the projects organize their communities either in Discord or in Telegram. However, what I think we're about to see is more, whether it's X, Discord, or Telegram, more or less they're kind of centralized entities. And I think what we're about to see is more decentralized solution, maybe decentralized social networks, decentralized communities that are run on new software that we will be creating right now to run communities. That's the bet.
Why not just stay on X or Discord? And I know Telegram's another big one. Why not just stay on those? Is it something that they're lacking? Why not just stick to those common platforms and why create your own?
I think a lot of us have grown weary of the lack of privacy, of the kind of centralized entities running the show, right? Like, people being canceled. These are things that happen in Web 2 that we're hoping we can change when it comes to Web 3, right? So, uh, you know, take any of the people who've been recently canceled and look at what's happening when Facebook decides to shut somebody down, or Meta decides to shut somebody down, or Google decides to shut somebody down. The idea is, ideally we work towards a future where the masses have to decide who gets canceled and who doesn't. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is the compensation. How do we compensate someone who's really good, who's an effective part of the community? I think Discord or X, there is no layer that talks about compensation, and also there is no layer that considers reputation. And I think compensation and reputation in community is something, personally, I'd love to see put on chain, because I think that will unlock a whole bunch of other interesting use cases, right? And I think that there will be kind of cross pollination between these ideas and other ideas in crypto, right? Let's say you're active in a certain community, always contributing to that community or to that crypto project. Should you somehow be compensated for that effort? And should that reputation carry over with you across communities?
And with something like Telegram, how secure is a network like Telegram when it comes to communication and things staying private?
The most secure app that I can think of right now is Signal. I think Telegram, I think WhatsApp, they it is not as secure as Signal. And again, we know, Snowden told us this, that a lot of these apps have backdoors. I'm pretty sure WhatsApp has a ton of backdoors. I'm also
100%.
pretty sure that Telegram has a ton of backdoors that would allow some people, NSA, CIA, other, global intelligence organizations access. And I think that I'm not naive as to think this doesn't happen, right? And I think this happens, and we know that even if a Telegram doesn't necessarily comply, Apple will comply. In fact, a few days ago, Apple, I believe, let me just pull that news. I believe Apple essentially delisted WhatsApp in China.
When you say delisted, what does that mean?
Means you cannot find, like, here you go. Apple has removed popular messaging app like WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal from iPhone App Store in China after Chinese government ordered company to do so.
And they
So
have no other
even,
choice. It's if they want to participate in that market, if the government tells you to shut it down, you do what you're told because otherwise you're going to lose in that market share.
and now if you're WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal, and Signal runs a little bit different, but let's say if you're WhatsApp or Telegram and you want to be in China, what are your options? You have to comply. And I believe that the beauty of the decentralized world, the beauty of, you know, crypto is that you're able to build new protocols or new approaches to work around these things.
I recall Signal being much more of a topic a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I don't really know many people that use Signal nowadays. What do you think is the reason it didn't pick up as opposed to something like Telegram? Because Telegram has gotten a lot more popular over the years, even though Signal traditionally is accepted as a more secure platform. Do you think it's just the features of each individual app, or is there a deeper reason?
I think there's always a trade-off between popularity and security. The more, so if you want to make something more popular, I think it goes in the opposite direction of making something more secure. Because to make something more popular, you have to make it more usable, you have to make it more common stream, versus to make something more secure, it might mean that you're adding layers and layers of complexity, and that's okay. Like, I don't think Signal's aim is to, be the most popular. I think, the aim of being secure is what Signal is after, or other apps that are going to come after it. So the one, and I don't think I disagree with kind of Signal. It's probably not mainstream, but I know a lot of people that, and anyone who deals with security, and I work with a lot of organizations, or sometimes I work with different parties that we're doing security related work, and everybody uses Signal. Like, if I'm exchanging passwords with you, if I'm exchanging private keys with you, if there's some things that I need to convey to you that I know that email is not the best channel for it, Signal is my channel as of now.
Makes sense. And in regards to other trends, and I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I came
Mm,
across tokenization of real world assets.
yes,
Mind just explaining what that is at a high level?
yes. So let's the best example of this is when we talk about like real estate and real estate deeds, right? Uh, Today there is usually, every government has a registry where, oh yeah, if you're buying land, if you're selling land, if you're buying cars, if you're selling cars, you go and register that with an office, right? Like, for, if you're in Canada, if you're in Ontario, every time you buy and sell a car, you go to Service Ontario and you register that. However, what would that look like in a decentralized world, right? And so what we're seeing is kind of real world assets put on the blockchain. This is not something that is new. Like, in the previous bull run, in the previous cycle, real estate, like tokenization, was a big one, and we're now talking about like like physical, real world real estate, because we have also virtual real estate. They're not the same thing. We're talking about, can I essentially put building registration deeds on the blockchain and allow people to transact completely on the blockchain?
What are the building registration deeds that you're referring to?
Houses, right? Like, if you want to buy my house, imagine that my house that exists in the real world is listed on the blockchain. We're able to track its price, and we're able to track the wallet that owns the house. So that's kind of the registration that I'm referring to, right? And
Mhm.
so that's not the only real world asset, right? The other example of real world assets gold, right? So there is gold on chain. It's been there for 5 years now. I think PaxG did that. So it's an organization that decided to tokenize gold. So we're gonna tokenize gold. We're gonna tokenize silver. We're gonna tokenize every real world asset that can be tokenized will be tokenized.
So
And
in the
and
case of Pax Gold, it's legitimately backed by gold.
yes, by
So
physical gold.
this
So every time. Mhm.
this is more legit than the US dollar then.
Perhaps. Yeah, and so now again, there are complexities when it comes to tokenizing real world assets because there is a point where you go from on chain to off chain, right? Yeah. So, for example, what happens if this PAX organization goes bust? What happens to gold, right? So, I think there's a lot of work to be done in the physical world. I'm not sure who is working on these problems right now, but there's a ton of work that imagine that imagine that Paxos is replaced by a decentralized organization. Imagine a room or imagine a building with safes inside of them. And all of these safes, the only person who can unlock it is you. And the only way you can unlock it is by having your private key. That's the next layer that we need to truly decentralize things.
Is it possible right now to buy a house via crypto if you have it? Is something like that a possibility that is known?
This is happening today, and I would say that this happens in actually a lot of countries where you're able to, especially like third world countries, you can buy a house with crypto. The deed registration is still happening, in the physical world. However, I'll point you to Wyoming in the US. So Wyoming is one of the first states to recognize a DAO. Or remember in the last episode we talked about decentralized autonomous organizations. So Wyoming legally recognizes DAOs, and so which is like it now it's an entity that can exist in the real world, and in that sense, a DAO can buy real world assets such as land, such as buildings. So I think we're very, very close to, full on chain transactions when it comes to real world assets, especially in jurisdictions that are kind of ahead of their time, that recognize these concepts and they're kind of working towards making things happen.
That's very exciting. Although that adds a whole other layer of complexity around regulation
Yeah.
and
Like
now the government like will essentially have a full pulse on the system.
and I think that's okay, right? I think that's I'm not necessarily opposed to regulation. I think we need some regulation. The key is really
Mhm.
for you not to over regulate and kill innovation or under regulate and kind of create the wild west. And I think with everything humanity does, it always starts with the wild west, right? It always starts with one extreme, and we slowly over time we course correct and sometimes we course correct it to go to the completely other extreme, but then eventually we kind of go back and find our way. And I think with crypto and regulation, it's going to be the same game.
Where in the world would you say it's the most overregulated? Would you say Canada is one of those regions?
No, I think Canada is actually one of the better countries when it comes to crypto regulation. I mean,
Interesting.
if you think about it, we had BTC ETF and ETH ETFs years ago before the US. So I think Canada is actually on the leading front of that, but I think there's also other countries like Singapore is way ahead on in terms of regulation, in terms of crypto adoption, in terms of encouraging more and more crypto innovation to come to Singapore.
What are some of the other countries that are kind of on the leading edge right now? I think some of the South American countries are also starting to recognize. Is that
I
correct?
mean, El Salvador is the one that is like was ahead, and were laughed at for a while. But I think they're really doing really good stuff. Like El Salvador is one of these. Uh, in El Salvador, you can essentially go to Starbucks, buy a coffee with crypto. You essentially crypto is recognized as legal public tender.
Mhm. And
Now,
is it
when we
just
talk
Bitcoin
about
or is it any crypto?
Bitcoin specifically, I don't know enough to talk about other cryptos, but Bitcoin specifically, yes. Now, the other countries that come to mind is UAE, right? UAE is also kind of is regulating crypto and wants, is crypto friendly. So El Salvador, like this is the first country to do legal tender. Portugal encourages a lot of kind of blockchain innovation. Singapore, we mentioned. Malta is another one. And Malta started early. Malta started like 2017. UAE, we talked about. Now, USA, you know, Korea, Japan, I think these are the countries that are kind of working their way towards regulation. But again, it's slow, it's painful, and that's okay as long as we kind of get there.
And speaking of Bitcoin, um, could you talk a little bit about Bitcoin, NFTs, and ordinals and what those are?
Sure. So ordinals is probably like what? Oh my, March 28th, so like a year something old. So if we want to go back, just kind of put it very, very simply, we in the previous episode we mentioned how the blockchain is essentially a bunch of blocks, and each block has multiple transactions, right? That the blockchain network is going to take these transactions, verify them for you, prevent you from double spending the money, and so that's kind of part of securing the network. Now, what ordinals protocol allowed you to do is it allows you to leverage the Bitcoin blockchain, and instead of carrying accounting information about what transaction from which wallet to which wallet happened, it allows you to store some random data on the blockchain. And if that data happens to be a picture, right? If that data that you're storing on the blockchain happens to be a picture, it's now an NFT, right? And generally, like it doesn't have to be a picture. It can be any binary data. So can it be a song? Yes. And I think in that case, we can think of it as an NFT or as a non-fungible token. So I think if we want to talk about NFTs, we want to call out quickly the difference between something that's fungible and non-fungible. So something that's fungible, there's always more of, right? So for example, the US dollar or Canadian dollar that we use is fungible because like if I have $1 and you have $1, we can exchange them and nobody's sad. It's all equivalent in value. Versus non-fungible, the promise of non-fungible is that it's unique, right? You cannot easily or you cannot copy it, right? Now you could argue with me to say, hey, dude, it's just a JPEG, right? It's just a picture. What makes it unique? And the blockchain is what makes it unique, right? Yes, it's a picture, but picture number 555, like we're giving everything a serial number that is unique. And that's what makes it unique. Right now, you could also argue that that's not the only thing, right? The other argument is, why is a punk NFT worth a few $1 million? And the answer to that is because we believe, right? That's where we're gonna get into kind of the Ponzi and the meme side of things. That I mean, who said a Rolex should be 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 grand, right? Who said
The
that
market.
it's the market, right? And it's so we collectively came together and we said, yes, this thing has value. And if we say so, and again, who cares about the mass market? Like if there's only two people in the world that believe that something is true, then it's true, right? Then they can transact. Like if I believe that you have something of extreme value to me and I want to pay you $1 million to do that, who said I can't? Who gets to decide other than myself and you, who are part of the transaction, that I can't? And I think that's the power of crypto. That's the power of the blockchain, that it enables people to transact regardless, right? Like you and I can go and we can code something now into a smart contract that says, Anatoly and Shukri are going to exchange value when condition A, B, C are met. That is really the power of blockchain. That's the power of smart contracts.
Mind just elaborating at a high level what a smart contract is for those that don't know.
Perfect. Let's do that. So Ethereum, in essence, is a smart contract network, right? Ethereum, yes, a lot of people think of Ethereum as just a currency, but Ethereum is a decentralized computer, and you can write a set of instructions, which we call smart contract. Think of a smart contract as code where I write specific instructions that if this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, then do this, right? In essence, a smart contract is very similar to a legal contract, right? A legal contract is a document that says, if party A, it defines who party A is, and it defines who party B is, and it says if this happens, then that happens, right? What a smart contract platform allows you to do is basically do the same thing, except codify it, put it in code, and deploy that code on the blockchain for everyone to see and for the network to run. So going back to our previous example, Anatoly. So let's say you've got my shoes, and my shoes are worth $1 million, and now I need to pay you $1 million, but I'm gonna put a condition in there to say yes, only if my shoes are in mint condition, then I'm gonna pay $1 million for them, or only if it's delivered to me by this date and by this time, then I'm gonna pay the $1 million for it, right? Like a lot of contracts on in the real world happen in the same way, right? And so what something like Ethereum allows us to do is kind of codify them, put them on the blockchain, and have them run autonomously with no intervention from people.
And bringing that into opportunities for this year and some of the biggest problems in the crypto space right now that are not only preventing mass adoption, but are opportunities for software developers and for people in the market to improve is smart contract vulnerabilities a major challenge right now?
It has always been. Smart contract vulnerabilities is a big security risk, right? And I think any system that has massive value built into it, you're going to have hackers attempt to hack. PayPal is probably a sitting duck for hackers, right? They probably thwart. They have teams upon teams of security people. Their only goal is to prevent, PayPal from getting hacks. Or banks do the same thing. Banks have the same problem, right? Everyone is to be. Whenever you create a system where there is incentives to hack that system, you're going to have actors trying to hack that system. And so, smart contract vulnerability, it is a big problem. It's gotten much better. And by the way, part of that is also thanks to machine learning and AI. So I also think there's going to be AI solutions that come to market this year that are part of like the security tool set. And some of these tools existed for years now, right? Like I use tools whenever we write new blockchain smart contracts. There are tools that I run the contracts by, and what these tools do for now, some of them do what's called static analysis, but essentially it reads the code and historically looks at every previous vulnerability or every previous hack and every previous risk, and it's going to look at my code and say, hey, wait, this is a problem. There's an attack that if you define this variable like this, someone can execute that attack. So there are tools like that, but I think with AI we're about to get a much better set of tools that can look at the contract, assess vulnerabilities, and tell you how to fix them, and even fix them for you.
Got it. So smart contract vulnerabilities is one of the key issues right now. What other problems are there? with crypto?
If we take a network like Ethereum, gas is extremely expensive, right? And so how do we solve for that? This is where a whole bunch of layer twos are coming in to say, listen, instead of trying to do things on Ethereum, which is a very expensive network, let's do them on layer two. And layer two is going to, obviously it's going to scale better, is going to handle more transactions, and will, roll out, hundreds or thousands of transactions into one Ethereum transaction, so you don't pay as much for gas. Congestion is another problem. Like Solana right now, by the way, in fact, if I take Solana for the last month, Solana, because of its cheaper gas, managed to get massive adoption currently, but for the last month, congestion has been a big, big problem for Solana. So I think that's gonna also be something that is gonna, potentially kill the adoption. So, and this is where kind of there's a trade-off always between, how much you charge for people to use the network, and then how busy the network gets, right? And these are things that I think that there is no golden answer. You're gonna have different blockchains try to tackle this problem in different ways, right? Ethereum makes gas more expensive, right? To kind of reduce the congestion. So, but the drawback is you have to pay a lot. And that might actually be perfect for some use cases where, it's important for that transaction to happen regardless of the cost, right? Or, it doesn't matter. There's other situations where no, I just need more throughput of the network and I want it cheap, right? So this is where like there is no blockchain to rule them all, right? Like a lot of people just like to think, oh yeah, only BTC and Solana and Ethereum exist, but we have Phantom, we have Avalanche that are doing. To me, actually, I think Avalanche is one of the projects that has been, it's not always mainstream news, but they're working quietly at a lot of cool things, right? We have Phantom. We have now not ordinals. We have Runes now protocol coming online. Cosmos is another one that is also doing a lot of cool things, and so we'll see these problems get addressed in different ways. Now, how do we typically, at BitLab, we care about these things. For example, whenever we work on smart contracts and we know we have to deploy them on Ethereum, we do a lot of things to what we do. We spend a lot of time and effort doing what we call gas optimization. Is how do I minimize the amount of gas that smart contract will consume? An example of that is, if you were in the previous bull run, minting an NFT, right? So to mint an NFT, when the network was congested, the NFT itself could cost you like 200, $300, but then you might have paid like $600 on gas, which is ridiculous, right? So we will spend a lot of time kind of looking at how do we do gas optimization on the smart contract. We talked about obviously the kind of smart contract vulnerabilities. We talked about scalability, right? And scalability, a lot of it is being tackled by different blockchains. Regulatory and compliance, still a big problem today, right? And the way we deal with this is we have a network of securities lawyers that we work closely with on different projects, and we kind of lean heavily on their advice, because again, we're not lawyers, we're tech people, but we're also super duper familiar with securities law around certain things. For example, the very common thing that I find myself educating a lot of clients on is something called the Howey test. So let's pull that on the screen. I'm sure many people who follow crypto are familiar with kind of the Ripple lawsuit between them and the US, the SEC, and like the SEC is saying this is a security, or no, this is not a security. What we'll see this year is Ethereum. SEC might actually come after Ethereum, claiming that Ethereum is a security. So the SEC has a framework. There's a legal framework called the Howey test that defines whether something is a security or not. And so here are the criteria. Money is invested, right? So let me just actually go read the Howey test for you. And the Howey test comes from a U.S. Supreme Court case where the court defined what it means for something to be a security. Okay, and the criteria is that money is invested. That's one. The second one is expectation of profit. Let me know. There's a better way. Where the hell is it? Give me 1 sec. So these are the four things that part of an investment of money in a common enterprise with expectation of profit to be derived from the effort of others. Okay, so if you fail or if a crypto project passes these four things, then it's considered a security, right? So if I'm telling you, Anatoly, hey, invest in my project because I'm going to do a lot of work to promote this project, right? And this project, there's a lot of people investing in it and it's going to be profitable. I'm selling you a security. And if I'm selling you a security, I need to go and register that security with the SEC. If I don't, I'm going to be in trouble because essentially I'm breaking that law. And I'm selling securities without a license. And so a lot of projects, and when we work with companies and crypto projects, we kind of guide them towards what can you do on each one of these, and we look at your project as it is right now, and then a good securities lawyer is going to look at your project and decide how do I structure it such that it's going to fail one of these provisions, right? An investment of money is always there. So that's going to be a tough one, right? Like if you're trying to raise money for your startup or your crypto project, you need an investment, right? In a common enterprise, that's also a tricky one because, I mean, by definition, you're not raising money from one person. Then it's not a common enterprise. So that's fine. With the expectation of profit, this is where a lot of meme coins will fail or will fail the test, or you'll purposefully fail the test to say, listen, there is no expectation. This is a meme coin. This is a shit coin. Take it or leave it. You might make money, you might not. I have no idea. So now you have not set expectations on profit, right? And again, keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice here. It's just worth to kind of talk about them. And then to be derived from effort of others. So now it depends on how do we define others, right? If others doing the work are not the same people selling the security, it's fine, right? Let's say I tell you, hey, Anatoly, go and invest in this asset, but I'm not doing the work on the asset. I actually haven't failed the test. And by the way, the second important thing when you're launching a crypto project is to think about how do you set up the legal structure for all of these things. So a lot of good crypto projects will have like an operating entity that is actually responsible for liquidity and training and trading and the money aspect or the operational aspect of that crypto business. And then there's usually a separate tech entity that owns the intellectual property that does things for the operating entity as a service. A lot of projects, like heavy projects or big projects that we get involved in, we want to make sure they're structured in this way because we don't want the kind of the tech organization and the operating organization. And normally the operating organization is the one that has the most risk. And the one that is likely to be pursued by the SEC. So we want to isolate your tech assets and kind of the intellectual property you built and the value, because there's a ton of value in that alone versus the operating side of that business.
Got it. And we help with that regulatory compliance piece.
Yes, and this is especially important when we're dealing with public companies. So previously, we worked with a few public companies that were touching crypto. And by the way, it's a whole can of worms, right? Like you have certain reporting requirements for public companies, so you have to kind of produce data in a certain way. You kind of have to have certain records. We have to create like special reports and reporting dashboards for whenever a public company is about to touch crypto. And usually it's actually not even a direct relationship. So it could be like a public entity having another relationship with a private entity and then there's the tech entity. So there's a lot of kind of moving pieces there, but it can be done. And we've helped companies with that, again, from the tech standpoint. And we bring legal experts to help when it comes to the regulatory pieces of this, because it's complex and way beyond my pay grade.
So just to reiterate, smart contract vulnerabilities, scalability issues,
Mm-hmm.
regulatory
Mm-hmm.
compliance. I'm just taking notes
Yes.
here. What else is
Yes.
there? What other
UI
issues are there
UX.
from preventing mass adoption?
Usability, like generally speaking, the biggest issue plaguing crypto is the usability, and it starts with the wallet, right? You know, we know, or you've been told, not your keys, not your crypto. And so the whole key management aspect of the wallet is still extremely messy, right? People are not used to remembering, 8 or 12 word passphrases. And then what do you do with it? So a lot of people, will see the wallet passphrase and they'll snap a picture of it and they store it on their phone, or they write it down on the phone. I'm like, that is not a good idea. Because now if I get your private keys, I don't care about anything. If I have your keys, I have your wallet. I'm done. Right. So this is where we also spend a lot of time with, projects we work with, is setting up that kind of setting up the security, right. Um, a lot of what we do is, for example, whenever I expect a lot of money to hit a project, I don't want this money in a MetaMask. Heck, I don't want one person to have this money, because again, like, if that person has malicious intent, rug pulls, or God forbid passes away, you're stuck, right? So this is where, whenever we're dealing with crypto projects, we set up something called a multi-sig wallet, a multi-signatory wallet. That it's for me to do a transaction, it might require 2 or 3 people in the company to sign off, like, or 2 out of 3 people, or 3 out of 5 people to sign a transaction for that transaction to actually happen, right? So now going back to the wallet, because we started to talk about the wallet is the most cumbersome piece, and that's the entry point to the entire crypto system. Like, and then we go into, centralized exchanges. So for you to buy any amount of crypto today, your starting point might be, you go to, a Coinbase, or you go to a Kraken, or go to a Newton if you're in Canada. And so the only way for you today to access the crypto system is to start with a centralized entity, right? And now those centralized entities are going to do KYC on you. And if anyone who's a big fan of their privacy, they're like, why would I want to reveal to Kraken or to Coinbase or these guys my identity, right? And this is kind of part of the usability. The other one that, and you can see that some of these issues feed off each other. For example, okay, so if my wallet is complicated and the network is congested and the gas is crappy, what this translates to at the end of the day is extremely slow user interface, right? Or transactions. I'm used to buy something now with a credit card, and 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds, like 5 seconds in, boom, transaction processed, good, your order is complete. If we're talking about blockchains like Bitcoin, and now I'm waiting for 10 confirmations or 8 confirmations or whatever, it's time delay, right? So there is a delay between me sending something and that transaction being confirmed. And just people generally hate to wait. We want the instant reward. Like, we want that immediate gratification. And so the fact that in a lot of times I don't get that immediate gratification is killing adoption. Right. And now, how does this translate? I think it translates to a lot of things. If I'm doing e-commerce and accepting crypto, I have a whole set of things to deal with, right? If I'm in the gaming and I accept crypto, so now I have a whole bunch of also things to deal with. And of course, with that, also we talked about the security, right? Like, so anytime you build a fiat system, your risk is almost always less than building a crypto system, because of the decentralized nature of it. Uh, hackers are more incentivized. It's much easier to kind of run away with money on the blockchain than run away with money, by you taking it out of my bank account. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, but this is the current state of the world. And I think everyone in this space is working towards, like, what are the better alternatives, what are better outcomes, how can we make the security better. So you're with every project we do, we also ask ourselves and challenge ourselves to say, how do we do the security better? Of course, it's not enough for us inside the room to be thinking about that. So with a lot of projects, we go and get a third party to audit. We don't want to rely on only ourselves, so we go and find or use reputable third parties to do the audits on our smart contracts, on our projects. Sometimes we do penetration testing. We try to hack ourselves before we get hacked, right? And this is something you want to do.
Absolutely, and it's awesome to hear that. Obviously we're doing our due diligence and hiring others to test us and do that pen testing. And it also sounds like we also help with high transaction fees and slow transaction speeds, and we solve for those two particular issues as well.
And we solve them early by choosing the right chain. So what we start with is looking at your particular project, and then we ask ourselves, given everything we know about the blockchain. So and there's almost always a trade-off. Okay, if you look at the most liquidity, and by liquidity is like, I think it may be helpful to define what liquidity means. If I go and like just go open CoinGecko or CoinMarket, there is $378 billion locked into that chain. And if I go and just like, let's pick a smaller chain, Avalanche is like about what, $14 billion. And so now and then scroll down the list and you say, oh, okay, so let's look at Near Protocol. It's $6 billion. So whenever you're creating a project, or whenever you want to build the crypto app, you ask yourselves, okay, so where does the liquidity come from, and what is the best network for my use case? So if I need like high throughput, I know I'm going to be doing a lot of tiny transactions, Ethereum is a bad idea, right? So now we are either thinking, does it need to be in the ETH ecosystem, or can we go to a Cosmos ecosystem? Can we go to an Avalanche ecosystem? Do I want to do it on the main chain, or do I create my own chain? A lot of these uh, layer zeros, or just call them layer zeros, or you can call them layer ones, you can use their main chain, or some of them will give you an SDK so that you create your own blockchain. Now, it doesn't mean you're running it, doesn't mean you're hosting it. They're doing it for you. Avalanche is like that. So Avalanche, you can use the main Avalanche chain, they call it the C chain, or you can spin your own. And still, the network and the infrastructure and the compensation, all of this is done for you on Avalanche. But now you're able to kind of create your own chain. And to go back to something we mentioned in the previous episode, Axie Infinity. Axie started on Ethereum, but because of the transactions, because of the gas, they quickly choked. They couldn't get adoption beyond a certain point. And what unlocked things for them is Axie at some point said, okay, enough of this Ethereum crap. We're going to go and spin our own chain. And then you can see their adoption goes poof, poof, parabolic, right? And the network was choking. And so what you
And when you
want to
say
do,
choking, sorry to interrupt you, but when you say choking, is it specifically in the costs? Is it in the speed? Is it both?
the cost, it could be both. It depends on the use case. In the Axie's example, it was both the cost and the speed. Because again, Axie Infinity, a lot of their players came from Asia. They don't have a lot of money. They're not US. They don't have $200 to spend on gas. $200 is essentially what somebody might be making a month, right? Like if somebody's monthly salary is $200, like they're not going to spend their monthly salary on gas. And so this is where, going back, whenever we were working on a project, one of the first things we want to define is like, what is the ideal or what's the optimal chain for us to execute on this project? and there's trade-offs. And then the second thing after that, we say, okay, oh, great. So that narrows down the technology that we're going to be using. And then also now we go into kind of specifics. Okay, great. So if this is a token and we pick Avalanche, where do we want this token listed? Do we want it on a centralized exchange, and we do at some point, or do we start by listing it on a decentralized exchange or a DEX? So these are some of the considerations that we look at whenever we're starting to work with a founder on their crypto project.
And on the topic of changing currencies or changing
Mm,
protocols, on the last call
mm,
you mentioned that the market is starting to veer towards Solana as opposed to ETH.
mm-hmm.
Is it because of
Yes,
the high transaction fees and slow transaction speeds that this is happening? Or is there another
it's mostly because of
underlying
the.
reason?
I think it's mostly because of the gas fees on Ethereum. Like in my opinion, the biggest thing killing Ethereum is the gas. And that kind of made Solana the default option for a lot of projects. But as soon as it became the default option, now Solana is plagued by, like a lot of stuck transactions, slow transactions. As adoption picks up, the network is choking now.
Supply and demand. And you also briefly touched on the security portion and the nightmare of wallets and remembering phrases and taking picture of phrases. That got me to think about password managers. How secure are
Mm.
password managers?
Uh, Maybe one time we'll talk about my kind of, Shukri's laws of security, but I think there is no system that is like 100% secure. It's a matter of incentives, right? If there's very low incentives to hack a system, it's not, it's less likely to be hacked. But the more incentives there are, the more likely someone is willing to extend the effort. It's a matter of resources and effort, right? Like if someone has the resources and wants something very, very badly, they're gonna get it, right? And that includes, like breaching another, a password manager. So I can say this: a password manager is much more secure than a no password manager, and you're using your password across, the 50 or 100 accounts that you're using. That's terrible, right? So, and so therefore, security is relative, right? And using a password manager is better than not using any, right? Um, to me, I would say they're all equal. Like they all have equal risks and equal chances of being hacked. It's just a matter of of when and why.
Got it. I really want to hear about Shukri's laws of security, but I think we'll save that for another episode. We've covered
Mm,
a lot of ground today. We talked about crypto AI, tokenization of real world assets, communities, ordinals, and a lot of the common issues plaguing crypto and how BitLab helps in solving them. I
mm.
think it would be awesome in the following episode to have another crypto episode and perhaps even talk about some of the ethics, especially with the recent events of people setting themselves on fire. Um, but I think we'll save that for another episode. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Let's save it for another episode.